Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Union or Bust. You got Juan Perez here organizing Monster with Chris Lopez.
How's everyone doing? Chris Lopez, your union brother on TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms. Welcome to the 50th episode of the Union or Bust podcast. Yeah, that's 50. It's been a long time.
We haven't been canceled
We
yet.
haven't been canceled yet. That's good. All right. Anyway, I want to introduce our guests, starting off with labor leader Chris Smalls. Good for you to be here
Oh
in
yeah.
person.
Oh yeah.
You were on before, but anyway, and also we want to talk about Leila. We have Leila Khader, and she is an organizer for SEIU-UHW, and Kira, the president and executive director of the Center for Policy Initiatives. And last but not least, we can't have our 50th episode without the person, our first guest on our first episode, and that's Mejgan Afshan. She is the founder and of for Borderlines for Equity. And Mejgan, I mean, we started with you, and now we have Chris Smalls on the podcast. We have. So how did you get Chris Smalls on the podcast?
Well,
Because we couldn't do without you.
of course, and congratulations, you guys. This is an incredible achievement, and I'm so proud, even though I'm not like doing the podcast, but like I'm so proud of everything you guys have achieved and continue to achieve and push boundaries for our community and support our labor siblings all over, not just in San Diego, California, across the country, and internationally now. So, how did this happen? So, we were part of the folks that were attending and the folks that were supporting the People for Palestine conference from its very inception last year. And so we brought a delegation from San Diego to attend. And we had the wonderful, fortunate blessing to walk in the front doors the first 5 minutes when we arrived on that Friday. And we ran into Brother Chris. And it was then or never. And we started talking. And um, we knew that Chris had been on the podcast just the day before, and it was just incredible timing. I think the stars aligned. But what happened? What brought all of this about was in the very beginning of this genocide. We knew after October 7th we had to work towards making sure we would introduce a ceasefire resolution, and our board members and our incredible community members in San Diego came together, and we were able to help introduced the ceasefire resolution in the city of Lemon Grove. And then council member Allison Snow and council member Jennifer Mendoza helped us introduce it. And we had an incredible outpouring of support from the community. People we have never met that just happened to be there for another reason supported the resolution, spoke on the resolution, and we passed it without even one person speaking against it. And I was the first and only city in San Diego County that has passed a ceasefire resolution. And immediately after that, when people were telling us you could never do that, you could never imagine that, and truly that I never thought that that would ever come to pass. But Alhamdulillah, thank God Almighty, we were able to do that. And immediately after, our labor siblings, Juan, Christopher, and all the folks that we called upon to come together in our committee for the labor resolution, we were able to put together, a one pager. As you know, like all good organizers know, you got to put together a one pager with all the details and have those conversations, those difficult conversations, like we did during my campaign when I was running for city council. And they sent out, letters that called me anti-Semitic, and we had to have meetings in the community, so many meetings about what does it mean to be anti-apartheid. And I'm so thankful we had those conversations because it led up to the conversation and then the introduction of the ceasefire resolution at the Labor Council a year and a half ago. And that was incredible. I cried and I couldn't believe that we were able to support such an incredible resolution to be passed. And we had no idea at the time we're the only labor council in that time that had done it, and then you guys decided to be able to bring it forward again, and that's when I remember Leila and the coalition came together to be able to pass the genocide resolution. And when Chris spoke at the People for Palestine conference in front of over 4,000 people, we were shook because we didn't even know that San Diego is the only labor council in the country that passed it. And the people that were sitting there were asking us, "Is that true? Is that real?" And I'm like, I mean, if he said it, it's true. It's facts, you know. So in this time of misinformation and misdirection and confusion and chaos, I think the truth rings clear and loud, and that's what resonates. Chris's message, the ceasefire resolution, the genocide resolution, and continuing to help our labor siblings come up during this really difficult time, and supporting the people who are going to continue to push the envelope is kind of what we're about. And that's what I think brought us all together, and also God Almighty. I think it was definitely meant to be in this moment because we need change. We need true and lasting liberation.
Yeah, definitely. And that was like the first resolution, the ceasefire one a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And then we passed another one, the one calling it a genocide
Mhm.
at our labor council this summer. And what triggered it was when to me, and when I started calling you and then you, Leila, was when I saw that nobody was saying anything about when Chris Smalls jumped on the flotilla to go to Gaza to break the siege, that all the people that brought him into the White House to shake his hand and take pictures and selfies, like Bernie or AOC or even Biden, Kamala, nobody said anything when he then got captured and tortured and being held captive illegally. None of those voices came out. And we were paying attention on social media, of course, because that's all we do is we're on social media. And then we're like, wait, nobody, no tweets, no Instagram, no nothing of no letters or strong worded letters to anybody. And this is like the people that brought him in and congratulated Chris Smalls for organizing the first Amazon warehouse in Staten Island, New York. So I was like, there has to be, this is wrong. This is not right. Like, what are we labor or are we not labor? This is a labor leader. And we talk about these kind of principles, you know, like integrity. We care about human rights, civil rights, social rights, and this and that. And we don't draw borders around that. So then that's when I brought the crew back together again with Chris and Leila and a few others from the Labor Council to put together this resolution and kind of, I'm not going to say force our Labor Council because I don't think we had to do that, but pressure our Labor Council to pass this resolution. It did pass unanimously at the e-board first, and then but once we passed it at the e-board, that's when the AFL-CIO got word of it, and then that's where like this has to stop. Like we cannot have a Labor Council pass a resolution about Gaza being having a genocide. That they told Bridget Browning, the president of the Labor Council, that this is not our lane. This is for the AFL to take a stance on, not us as a Labor Council. And then Bridget said, "Fuck that. We're gonna put it on." We're going to put it on the agenda and let our delegates vote on it because it passed unanimously with our leadership. So she did. She put it on the agenda. They did send a rep. And Chris, we never corrected you because we thought it was kind of interesting. But the rep came from LA. Um, now that it's going to go public, they're probably going to find out who the rep was. But they're going to point this rep out. I'm sure it's already public. But they sent a rep from LA to come to our delegate meeting and to tell us how this is not our lane, and you were there, you were there. This is not our position to take. This is the AFL took a position on this. They said
to let them lead us in that moment too, is what they were saying as well. They were like, you guys need to wait until we say something and then you're able to say something, otherwise you're out of line. And that was a big part of their argument. Was in our resolution title we say the labor movement, right? And that was the point, that we could not speak on behalf of the labor movement. So we were told, as over 70 delegates in the room, that we could not lead the way in speaking on behalf of the labor movement. And that was actually one of the biggest things the rep was saying as well, was that you need to change that, strike it, and say it's on behalf of San Diego because the labor movement does not agree. So
yeah, she said you do not represent the labor movement, and to tell like union people you don't represent, that's kind of weird. It's like maybe that's not something you should be telling people, especially when we're passionate about an issue. Then you're coming in as an outsider telling us how to do our thing. And it's a paper. It doesn't really mean much outside of it being a paper and taking a stance. It's not physically withdrawing money or weapons or anything like that. As you can see, the genocide is still going on.
Not yet.
Exactly. But they that wanted to stop. Imagine once we start stopping the ports, you know what I mean? So it was a bunch of honey badgers got together and we all spoke in favor, over 50 delegates, and nobody spoke against it except for her, of course. And like Chris and Leila, we called a few people and texted a few people to speak in favor because we knew a rep was going to come from the AFL and speak against it. But no, it was like over 50 people speaking in favor, which was pretty cool because it was very organic at that point. It was where I think what at that night we met the moment, our labor council as
Yes.
delegates.
Absolutely.
We met the moment. Like the moment is over here. Labor has been here for a very long time. And then it's finally like, oh shit. And you heard last night, Chris, and Chris and Michelle, that you heard like Sarah saying, I'm at the Labor Council building. I never thought this would happen here.
Yeah.
Like this is ridiculous. She said, like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this dinner's happening at the Labor Council building. But I think that's showing that like if some of us that are staff and rank and file, we have to push our leadership
Yeah.
to do the right thing. So I wanted to bring in Leila. I know like that we're very uh crucial in this process of putting this Gaza resolution together. You're a Palestinian American, obviously very passionate about this issue. And so, did you think, like, I know I'm saying that we met the moment as a labor council, but what do you think that about labor and how is labor reacting to this whole October 7th and everything that's going on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so I've been in the labor movement for, about 5 years now, and I'm a young organizer. And so coming into this space, I was always so amazed that we could have these kinds of conversations about social justice and what was going on. And a really big moment for me was when my union president addressed us. And was talking about the South Africa apartheid. And I was like, wow, like this man's really about it, right? Like we can talk about these things, apartheid, we can use these words and then also reflect and say that if this were to happen again, like this is what we would do, or if this is currently happening, this is what we would do. And so I think that like for me as a Palestinian American, like the information of what's going on in Palestine, the occupation, the apartheid, this is something that I've carried my whole life. It's also something that, you're essentially taught, especially by, I have immigrant parents, not to speak out on, like, be careful. This could cost you your job, right? And so it was really unique for me to find a space that, I could possibly talk about this because they are talking about apartheid and these things. And I think that, when October 7th happened, that started a big conversation for a lot of people for the first time. And like to give people the benefit of the doubt, we also have mainstream media and active sources like APAC, like these other organizations that are trying to push down this topic and make us feel uncomfortable for even being curious about it. And so I think that when October 7th happened, there was a lot of mixed feelings of like, oh, well, we need to say something now, we need to condemn Hamas now, we need to come to the defense of what happened and condemn this. And I felt like if we were going to have that conversation, then we needed to bring in like what also had been occurring before October 7th. So that was a big, kind of moment for me when I realized that, labor wasn't going to talk about the history. We weren't going to talk about really anything. And I think that, we took a huge backseat to what was happening. And this was something that was really shocking for me and was a turning point in the labor movement for me because I felt so confused. Like, how can I go out to organizers and to members and speak about the movement, speak about social justice? And my message didn't extend globally. I couldn't do that. It was only local to like even my own union's issues, right? Like we couldn't tie everything together. And immediately I saw that there was this huge hole in this problem that, I mean, if we continued on this path, that like we could never be successful as a movement. And so I think that that was something that, I felt with the labor movement, but I think that there's lots of work to be done, and that's exactly what we were trying to accomplish when we said something. Something unique for me within my organization was after October 7th, and there was lots of like hate actions occurring right in the United States. The 6-year-old Waida that was stabbed in New York multiple times by his landlord, that occurred. And I'll never forget this moment because I received an email from a very highly established person in our organization, and had remarks on October 7th on how there was disbelief against like anti-Semitism, and she couldn't believe this, and she was saddened about it. And I read that email. She did not name the 6-year-old, but referenced him as a 6-year-old, right? And these are things that we learned again in 2020 and 2018 with Black Lives Matter. We need to name these people. They are humans. We need to humanize them. And so I saw this like very clear kind of biased message going out to the staff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not okay. I'm a young organizer, at this point now. Like, I think I was 2.5 years into my job, and I'm like, I need to respond. I'm going to lose my job. It's fine. But I need to say something. And so because my union opened up the conversation the same way that Chris was able to open up the conversation at the larger scale with labor, because they opened up that conversation, I could respond too, right? So like finding those moments where you can, take what someone's saying and run with it. And so, yeah, should I tell that story right now? What happened or?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
It's your moment.
Okay. So I responded to this email, and ironically, I was also a couple days away from hopping on a flight to Jordan to go visit my family, and this is a month after again everything that's kind of highlighted and gone on October 7th. And so I respond to this email, and it results in an internal resolution getting passed by my organization. Actually, what happened was I found out I was the only Palestinian in my entire organization, a staff of about 400. But because I said something, a resolution was passed internally, and it resulted in $50,000 to Doctors Without Borders to go to Palestine. And so this was something that, for the first time, I was like feeling risk, took a chance, and was like, this is what feels right, did it, and it resulted in something good. And I think that from there, you keep going with those moments.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for sharing that story. I know like sharing personal stories like this and putting your body and your careers on the line is very hard. I know people are getting canceled and getting fired for taking this strong position, getting phone calls and threats. But I think sometimes you got to do what's right. And it paid out in that situation. But wanted to bring in Kira Green. She's the president and executive director,
Yep, that's right.
a CPI, Center on Policy Initiatives, which is a nonprofit organization here in San Diego. And they came out of the labor movement, of the Labor Council over 30 years ago. And you have a strong history of partnering up with unions and the cause and working for social rights, economic rights, civil rights, all the good things, right?
That's right.
And you all also supported and sponsored the event that happened yesterday at City College, which also Chris Smalls was a keynote speaker there. So you all are doing amazing work here in San Diego. Do you want to speak a little bit about the work that you all do and why you all, speaking of risks,
That's
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you all are willing as a nonprofit to take risk and a stance on this issue.
Well, I think number one, I really appreciate the podcast. I want to say congratulations on the 50th podcast. It's a good year for 50. Chris is going to be 50 this year.
Yeah.
And it's a
that's
moment.
right.
I should have gave out that information.
Yeah, it's all about 50. Yeah, you got to make sure people know about your birthday. I mean, I think it's important to me to say that what CPI is about is it was formed to create a bridge between labor and other community organizations. And I always say that about labor and other community organizations because people in labor are part of the community. It's not separate. But there are lots of stereotypes. In all this conversation we're talking about, there are a lot of stereotypes that have to be overcome, and those include stereotypes about labor. And a lot of people don't believe in the labor movement because they're like, they've seen some TV shows where everyone's a mobster and it's like not. And we spend a lot of our time talking about how labor is like the largest actual exercise of democracy that most people engage in. And they engage in it in multiple levels, not only voting, but people put their money where their mouths are, where their rights are, and they fight for things. They take risks together. So it's really shocking to me, thinking about where we stand at CPI, to hear someone say from the AFL, like, you should take the lead from us, when in fact, what we are encouraged to go out and tell people is like, that's not how it works. A democracy is bottom up. And so the people at the top can't do things without knowing what its member base wants to do and what is meaningful to them. And so that's a lot of, to me, that doesn't feel risky. Even our decision to sponsor the event, it wasn't a decision that I made as the executive director. We run a student internship program, our Students for Economic Justice. We do work, those interns stand up, they go work with organizations, they've worked with yours, and they came and said, this is important to us. We want to sponsor this event. Can we do that as an organization? And the answer is yes. We can't stand around and say we believe in freedom and justice for everyone and then hide our hands or cover our mouths when it's hard. It's useless. If we're not going to speak up when it's hard, then we might as well not be speaking at all. And so I think that has, to be fair though, I think we've also tried to make sure that we're not just doing things that are performative. And that we're waiting to be led by people who are most impacted, because we might have ideas, but we also grow up in a country that does not do a good job of informing us of all the things that are happening to people all over the world. And so it's really important to take a moment to listen. And I think that was also what was important about the event. Any space where we can be able to come together and learn, that's a big part of the work of CPI as well. And so I also want to just thank you all for demonstrating what labor can be, and that it can be and should be and actually does work when the people at the grassroots of it make a decision and decide to stand up for something. And that makes our work easier, because that's what we're always saying. That's the promise of the labor movement.
I always say no one wrote a book about anyone that was safe. Okay. In the labor movement, there's people that are willing to die for the labor movement. There's willing people to die for what they believe in. And, you inspired us, Chris. You really did when you went on the flotilla. You're very well known, and you put everything on the line. You could have been killed. You could have been shot, all these different things. And you wanted to, tell us a little about, that experience.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, and thank you for inviting me back. I'm definitely honored to be here on your 50th episode. So congratulations on that. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Everything was intentional. I pretty much try to move with intent, especially after being fired from Amazon, $2.2 trillion company in the middle of the most deadliest times of modern time history, the pandemic. I put my life on the line for that. And just knowing that this was a familiar feeling, putting your life on the line, putting your body on the line, that's the responsibility of a trade union and a trade unionist. We have to be the shield for the working class, and it's our responsibility and our due diligence to fight for the working class. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it costs us our lives, but we sacrifice for the greater good. And that's what history has always shown us. So, when people say, like, how did you defeat Amazon? This 2.2 unorganizable juggernaut, behemoth of what they would say. And it's like a David and Goliath story. We threw the first stone, and we knew that we had to bring people together in order to defeat Amazon, because they don't know our community better than we do. And bringing people together to defeat Amazon should motivate not just millions of workers around the world, but the entire working class, because everybody should have the right to speak out about their workplace. Everybody should have the right to organize. Everybody should have the right to strike. Your body is always your strongest weapon, and that's what the labor movement should be preaching to their members, is that the same weapon that I had in prison in Israel was my body, is the same weapon that I have on the outside. withholding our labor. If we want to talk about going on a general strike, well, what is a general strike? It's actually doing nothing. That's the beauty of it. You actually get to sit home and do nothing. And the reason why I got on this flotilla, multiple reasons. Being a Black man, because even our Black community is being misinformed. You know, we're being told to sit this fight out right now.
Yeah.
And you can look at my comments right on my social media, and you'll see a number of Black people saying, "Why did this Black man get on that boat? Or why did he speak out about Palestine but not about Congo or not about other African genocides?" And if they were to dig a little deeper, they'll see that I've done all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, I'm a Black man myself whose father's been incarcerated my whole life, whose mom, single Black mother, had to raise 2 boys, me being the oldest. So I definitely know what it's like to be oppressed. And when I was thrown in prison, you know, it wasn't my first rodeo. You know, Amazon threw me in prison way before Israel did for handing out pasta. So, you know, just knowing that Amazon has everything to do with this genocide, the investment of billions of dollars towards their military industrial complex. Essentially, Amazon Web Services is the Iron Dome. Knowing that Amazon's technology, when we're talking about policing in our country, if you got a Ring camera, well, guess what? Your Ring camera is directly connected to your local police department. And Amazon has everything to do with that. You know, 1 out of every 4 Americans in the next few years is going to work at Amazon. And that is not fabricated. In less than 30 years, this company has hired and fired the entire workforce in America. And that's unbelievable to even say, but it's the truth. Their turnover rate, even at my one facility in JFK, is 150% a year.
Wow.
So 2 to 3% weekly is being turned over. They already hired and fired the entire Staten Island 3 times over. And we're talking about the number 1 company in our country for injuries over the industrial industry.
That's crazy.
Amazon is considered retail. And that's the most shocking thing about it, is that we allowed this company to change the entire society in less than 30 years.
You know, Chris, when you were on when you were talking about the flotilla and you were on the flotilla, I couldn't help but think about, you know, the fire. I don't know if you've ever heard of the fiery furnace, but in the book of Daniel, you hear about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and you know, they were willing to die for what they believed in, what was right. And it seems like you're putting everything on the line to do what's right. And you know, I think the labor movement, I think everyone has to find their own fiery furnace.
That's
You know,
right.
you have to make yourself feel uncomfortable to do what's right. And sometimes you have to lose your job. Sometimes you have to lose your life. But, you know, Dr. King said, you know, you know, every time you fail to do what's right, you die a little inside. And you might be 49, as I happen to be, and you might live till you're 90, but you're just as dead at 90 as you would be at 49 because you failed to do what's right.
Right.
So
right.
I wanted to say all that at the gathering yesterday, but I said I wanted to save that for the podcast.
Yeah. Nah, yeah. Yeah. No, amazing. I mean, you're absolutely right. And, you know, we get on the flotilla, once again, breaking down that barrier, that stigma in the Black community, reminding folks that the civil rights movement stood hand in hand with the Palestinian movement, reminding folks that our ancestors, and some that are still alive, like Angela Davis, has always talked about it and always spoke about and stood with the people of Palestine. Malcolm X, everybody loves Malcolm X. Everybody wants to preach Malcolm X, but he went to Gaza in 1964. You know, these conversations are not being publicized as much as it should, as far as education and curriculum, everything. It's not being taught to us. And the history that we created with Amazon, people want to say, well, this was never done. Well, this was done over 100 years ago. I said, well, true, but we ain't never had a company like Amazon 100 years ago. We didn't even have the technology that we have 100 years ago. So this has never been done before. The history that I created and my union created is still being written.
Yes.
We just got started. And the same thing that relates to the Palestine movement. This is 77 years. And you'd think that sounds like a very long time, like the civil rights movement, but it's actually not that long ago. This is still very much in the beginning stages. And we have to understand that there's no cavalry coming for us. The labor movement has a responsibility. And I know in my short time of organizing within the last 3 years as a union president, and the travels around the world, by the way, I recommend everybody get their passports.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get it.
Yeah. But I say that
Chris, you
because
gotta get it. What?
Yes.
I say that
just got
because
my real-
it's very important. 70% of Americans don't have a passport, and that's by design.
That's crazy.
Because the propaganda that we only see here in this country, on the outside looking in, it looks bad.
Yeah.
And that's what folks don't understand, is that you can go right over the border to Canada and have heart surgery for $0. And then you come back here and you have no health care, like myself. So once again, getting on this flotilla was to do exactly that, to shine a bright light on the U.S. labor movement,
Yes.
who's been complicit for the last 2 years. And we could talk about the resolutions. I'm so happy these resolutions passed. But we still got to be realistic and say this is just a piece of paper.
Exactly.
So resolutions or not, the U.S. labor movement has failed us and failed the working class. They should be putting their bodies on the line as well. They should be digging into them strike funds that some of these unions are sitting on, that they brag about all the time. They love to say that they got $300 million of strike funds. Well, now's the time to use them shit.
Exactly.
And it's well overdue. And we could talk about how our union density is in the trash. Less than 6% in the private sector, less than 10% in the public sector. And it's still on the decline every day because every job that's being created right now is unorganized and ununionized.
Exactly.
Artificial intelligence is taking over. Every which way we look, self-checkout, selfless. Corporations are now using AI to deliver stuff with drones. It's happening right in front of us, and labor is still just behind the finish line. And we're not seeming to be moving in the right direction. So you need rank and file members, you need people in the community, you need labor leaders to put their money in their mouth with, and not just talk the talk, but walk the walk.
That's absolutely right. I think of the labor movement. We talk about the labor movement a lot. We say the labor movement. An injury to one is an injury to all. But is that what you really believe?
It doesn't say exclude Palestinians from.
No, it doesn't.
And that's something that it really resonated with me when I saw that there was a statement that was put out from the AFL-CIO that said that Palestinian the fight for Palestine is outside the scope of labor, and this is it's just not true.
Well,
yeah.
But I think for me, it also goes back to, I knew that the labor movement was not going to make the right decision on this, because if we look like even at 2020, when we were saying defund the police, like I think it's important to understand that the war machine and the policing machine are the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same technology. I remember in 2019, I went to Jerusalem, and I was struck by the fact that the border looked exactly like our border between here and Tijuana.
I went in 2019 too. Oh my God.
Right. And I was just, and And there was a person who came, I was on this tour, and he was describing like how there's cross training between the Israeli
Yes.
forces and US Border Patrol and others about how to police things. So now we're experiencing
Yeah.
these folks in our cities, in our communities. I don't understand how people don't see that as all one fight.
Mhm.
And I don't understand how I'm struggling in my own work to like make this point that when we said defund the police, like if people had embraced more of that conversation, we would be having a different conversation about war. We'd be having a different conversation about giving weapons to countries to use against everyday people and children and, elderly folks. But as much as we justify it in this country to police down to, the things that you're saying, Chris, like that so many of our families have experiences of being incarcerated in this country, is not surprising then that our international policies justify and support policing of people and turning people's lands into prisons for them.
The military industrial complex in our country and especially in our region is out of control. And something you brought up on the border tour that we were on yesterday, Chris, you were talking about seeing Mustafa Barghouti and being inspired and wanting to visit his offices in Palestine. And it just reminded me of the trip that I went on in 2019 with Eyewitness Palestine, and we were able to thankfully go to many sites in the occupied territories and go to the border of Gaza and see what was happening with our own eyeballs and experience the surveillance mechanisms that there's this exact same thing happening right here at our southern border, as well as watching the tear gas canisters that are being used were the exact same ones used on our siblings and on ourselves during the Black Lives Matter protests. Our organization was out there being support as well as legal observers to the protests, not just in La Mesa and downtown and City Heights and our own community members. And we ourselves were targeted by that same surveillance and those same canisters. And you can never, once you see it with your plain as day eyes, you can never turn a blind eye to it. And I think the important thing is that people have woken up since 2020 and also since January of January 20th. I guess the magic number is 20. That this isn't going anywhere unless we fight back, and boycotting is absolutely part of the process by which we take our power back as a people and as a society. And I was thankful enough to have a roommate. My roommate was Miss Caroline Hunter, who started the boycott movement against apartheid South Africa. And she came to San Diego in April of this year and spoke about her experience. And so many people think that the civil rights movement and being anti-apartheid was in the ancient times. It's not ancient at all. She's alive and kicking and spicy as ever. And we need to learn from our leaders and take that banner of being anti-apartheid and continue, like you were saying, Leila, to continue to push those conversations, push the envelope and not stop because people don't feel like being comfortable because we can't afford it anymore. They've already cut off food. They've already cut off EBT benefits. They've already cut off or laid off so many people. What are we waiting? Literally, planes are falling out of the sky. And so I think it's time for people to wake up and listen to our leaders and visionary people like Chris who continue to shine the light on what's happening.
That's why we have this podcast.
Yeah.
MSNBC and Fox News, they don't get paid to unite us, they get paid to divide us. And Juan and I, we wanted to have the right conversation about the labor movement. And the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And
Yeah.
Juan.
And what you were saying, Kira and Beishkan, and you brought this up too, Chris, I think yesterday, about our foreign policy is our domestic policy.
Mhm.
It's everything that we allow overseas, and it's gonna come back here to the US. That's what's been happening for the past whatever years, 50, 60, 80 years. And like I was in the Marines, I've been deployed twice. I deployed to Afghanistan, and actually me and Beishkan were on the board on a nonprofit I don't know, Immigrant Rights Consortium,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
We're on the same. And then she said she was Afghanistan, and I was a Marine. And I was like, "Fuck, should I say that?" Like, and then I said it, but that's when we started talking,
Yeah.
and we started like
I forgot
clicking.
about that.
Yeah, we're on the same board. That's where we met.
Yeah,
And
that's
then, but my experiences overseas actually made me extremely anti-war. Like, I think that's what happens with veterans. You either like double down
That's right.
and like, no, fuck that, I'm a Marine kind of deal, and or you just open up and then you accept what it actually was.
Mhm.
But then you go through like a mental shift kind of deal. And then that's what made me anti-war. So to me, when I saw what we're doing out overseas, I'm like, that's gonna come back here to the US eventually. And lo and behold,
Here it
this
is.
what's going on. It's been going on for a while, but now it's like double downing on the ICE. They upped
Mhm.
their budget to $100 billion. ICE did.
Mhm.
They're taking our people on the streets, even U.S. citizens. I'm a U.S. citizen. You're a U.S. citizen, but they can take us.
Yeah.
And I see all these people fight that. Like the AFL is on top of that.
Yeah.
The AFL is like, we're fighting ICE, blah blah blah, and all that. They're good on that issue, but why can't they then link the other issue? You know, if we're talking about human rights and dignity, and this is not right. Like when we passed the Gaza resolution that August, the following morning I see Liz Shooter on MSNBC talking about Trump is an authoritarian figure and this and that, and we need democracy. We need to take back democracy. Gavin Newsom's talking about Prop 50. And then it's like, whoa, what about Gaza? What about everything over there? Like you're talking about being authoritarian, Trump is. How come you're not supporting this resolution? Then how come you're shutting us down here in San Diego? So you're not practicing what you preach. So I think tying the two issues together has been one of our main things for me and Chris. Is like it's so important that we are able to link all these issues. Otherwise, you're not really about what you're saying you're about. You're not consistent in your beliefs. But have you all heard? I want to throw this in here because I believe all of us are the messenger. Have you all heard of Allegory of the Cave from
Yeah.
Plato?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Allegory of the Cave is basically Plato wrote this, and he talks about like some slaves being chained down in a cave, and then being forced to observe a wall, and behind them is people projecting images onto that wall of what things are in society, like what a sun is, what a sheep is, what a lion is, and then the slaves, that's what they interpret life is. That's it. Whatever these people tell them it is. One of them breaks free and gets out of the cave and then actually learns what life is. It's like, well, actually, this is what the sun, this is what it feels to feel the sun. This is grass. Oh my God. So he goes back into the cave, tries to wake everybody up and says, hey, everybody, like, this is not
Mhm.
life. This is not what it is.
Mhm.
Life is actually out there. But what ended up happening was they turned their backs on, they ostracized the guy. They ostracized the messenger. So it's kind of like some like matrix stuff, you know, getting red pilled or blue pilled. Some people are just comfortable in their ignorance and they'd rather be ignorant than to wake up and feel like the realities of the world is more uncomfortable. But this question goes to everybody, like if we're more comfortable like just having a regular career, a regular job, keeping our head down instead of sticking our necks out. Because when I was ignorant, when I was in the Marines, I was really happy. Like it was easy. Like it was easy. I was looking for the weekend. I couldn't wait to go to Vegas, and that was it. Very simple-minded.
Not
Like
the truth one.
I couldn't wait for the weekend, and that's it.
Mhm.
But then once you get woken up, you're like, oh shit, and it's so stressful. It's so like, you know what I mean? So
Real. It's
Yeah.
real.
why choose the red pill? Everybody, why do you all choose to take the red pill? Cornel West, we had him on the podcast.
Yeah,
He was on the Matrix. I don't know if you know that. He was on the first and second one, I think.
yeah.
So this question just goes to everybody. Like, why choose to be awake? Why choose to be the messenger, even though you do get ostracized by a lot of people, even though you're even your own people sometimes?
I mean, I think the answer is simple. If we don't get up and do it, who else is going to do it? If Chris Smalls don't tell the workers in the warehouse that COVID-19 is in the warehouse, tens of thousands of workers die around the world because Amazon employs 2.5 million workers. And if I don't sacrifice my job and cost the company $4 billion,
Oh yeah.
Wow.
tens of thousands of workers would not be coming home to their families. So it's the same thing. If I don't get on the flotilla, does the labor movement fight? Do y'all pass this resolution? Do y'all even talk about this resolution?
Probably not.
So, yeah, that's why I get what I do what I do, because I ask myself that question every day. If I don't get up and do the work, who's going to do it? And shockingly, the answer is nobody. So I'm glad to be here, but I'm also at the same time should I be the only labor leader that's banned from Israel for 100 years? No. It should be Liz Schultz, one of these people that say we need to fight back and take back our democracy. Well, don't just talk the talk, once again.
And you're on the Canary mission as well, too, right?
Yeah, shout out to Columbia University.
That's right.
The encampments, the students, I joined them out there on their first day and gave an amazing speech to the students. Next thing you know, I'm being doxxed and I'm on Canary mission and all of that. But, these are things I wear with a badge of honor, but I shouldn't be the only one. It's the only plight that I have with this is why is it that I'm the first labor leader to go talk to the Communist Union over in France who has a contract with Amazon for over a decade?
Wow.
If the labor movement was serious about organizing Amazon, they would have sent union reps over there years ago.
That's right.
But because they're stuck in their bubble and because they're letting politics lead them, they don't believe in the communist or socialist movement. But every country that goes on general strike is led by a communist or socialist party. We don't have that here. Until we escape the two-party plantation, we're going to be doomed. So I take the red pill every day.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I mean, I'll just add that, I think that we are all subjects of the colonizer's agenda as well, right? And so, like, it is a benefit to, the 1% and these people that want us to stay asleep, right? They don't want us to understand what real collective power looks like. And when we talk about politics, I mean, that's a huge part of the conversation is like there are entities that are, using resources actively to ensure that we stay asleep, right? To ensure that we don't get curious and that we can't connect the dots. And one of the things that happened that I was really concerned about when Mahmoud Khalil, an organizer here, was speaking out and was faced with, a court case and things of that sort that was going to determine of whether or not he could even be here. As an American, as an organizer, that was a big moment for me. I was like, we need to say something. And this is how it also connects. And I think that like they don't want us to connect these issues. They want us to be very divided. They don't want us to have collective power. And it's a big part of us realizing that it is just like a big boss fight, right? And so this is how it all connects is, we can't keep finding the ways in which we are different and allowing them to change definitions. I mean, our freedom of speech is under attack.
Yeah.
And so as organizers, we should be very concerned that they are setting precedents for how we can operate in spaces, how we can build collective power, how we can organize. And if that's at stake, everything is at risk. And so I think that like that is why we have to, not only take the red pill, but give others that pill, right? Share the pill.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, we'll take that one.
Double dose.
We're pushers.
As a union representative, part of my job is to wake people up. And, if there's a new union member, a lot of people don't know what the unions are all about. And I usually tell them the same thing. When I was a young dad, I was like 28 years old. I took my daughters to the zoo and went to go see the cheetah cage. And it was a big cage and there's trees in there and everything, but I'll never forget for the rest of my life. There was a dog, a golden retriever inside that cage with a cheetah and it was barking at that cheetah going, and the cheetah was all scared. And I'm looking at this and I asked the zoo guy, what's going on? He's all, the cheetah thinks the dog is dominant because the cheetah was born in captivity. So, I always tell my new union members, remember who you are. You're part of the union. You're part of the labor movement. We all work together to get the best contracts possible. I say in the labor movement, when people are finding their fiery furnace, like I spoke with before, we're a pride alliance in the labor movement and the pride will eat, but how much is ultimately up to us. So staying active, staying involved, is really important. And, I think there are, we want to that's probably one of the
And
things.
here's your red pill.
Here's your red, and here's your red pill.
Yeah.
And take this.
Yeah, I guess I feel like I didn't choose it. I grew up in a family where like this is the only option. My dad was active in his union. My dad read a lot. My grandparents were both all union members on my dad's side of the family. The first thing my dad said when I got a job was at a school. When I came to San Diego State, he said, "Do they have a union there? Do you have a union?" It's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're going to sign up, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." Um, my grandmother talked to me. She was one of the first employees at the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in the South. She's a Black woman investigating cases in Tennessee and Kentucky and Arkansas. Um, so I think all my life I've known people who like were willing to speak up and were willing to do what they could do. And I think mostly what I feel like most days is that I'm not doing enough, that I don't know enough, that it's not big enough. We've been trying to connect with Amazon workers here in San Diego, and it feels like the skills that my grandparents knew or like my ancestors knew about how to organize, I'm having to learn again at 50 years old, like how you really think about building a movement that's not just like what we're used to doing. And I'll be honest, we talk about this at CPI all the time. Like we've gotten used to the ability to go bring a few people, talk to some elected officials, pass a policy. That's not a movement. The only thing that poor people have is our bodies, our ability to decide where we spend our time and our money. And I think we have lost the skill of doing that. We think that someone else is going to fight this fight for us. We think we can just go vote for people, even though we simultaneously complain that we don't like the people that we get to choose, the choices that we have to vote for. It is really hard work to build a movement. And I think even some of us who think that we're fighting the fight, like when we really make ourselves sit down and say, what would it take to fundamentally transform the society we live in? Like, I don't think I do a good job of signing up for that fight every single day, of making the hardest possible choices. And I think that's what I respect so much about the choice that Chris made, is because, you know, most Black men in this country are trying to stay out of prison here to put your life to say, I'm going to go somewhere else in the world and take that risk. Like those are the kind of big risks that we all have to be willing to take. And that is a different pill. Like, I don't know, that might be the double dose of the red pill that I need to figure out. And I want to live up to that. I often say to people, like, what inspires me in this work all the time is that I have to imagine that I have an ancestor, at least one, who woke up one day in a country like completely, she was never going to see her family again. She was never, ever, ever going to maybe hear someone speak the language that she grew up speaking. And she made the decision to like keep living. She made the decision to raise children, maybe her own, maybe not her own, but like I'm here because somebody kept making those set of decisions and I want to leave something better. And so I feel like I didn't have a choice, and I hope to hell that my daughter feels like she doesn't have a choice, that she's growing up in a world where like that's what you have to do. So yeah, I don't have a choice. Blame it on my dad, blame it on my grandma.
I love that because I think there are so many of us, and I would say we are in the global majority, not the minority, that are born to families, born to circumstances, born to places where we have nothing to do but we have to fight. And, being the daughter of Afghan, refugees, my mother and father were union members their whole lives. Shout out to IBEW and the nurses at Kaiser. And my dad was a part of IBEW when he was in Afghanistan. And a lot of people don't even understand when they say international, they mean International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And I was always instilled with the knowledge that, being a Muslim, being a part of the Shia minority, that we were targeted long before the Taliban targeted other or ISIS or all these groups are in the news in America. They were targeting people like me because we woke up and we decided to pray differently. And I think it comes down to a belief in an understanding and knowledge that we have so much unlearning to do and so much decolonizing of our own minds to do, as was brought up at our gathering last night. to understand that this country has always been what it is right now. It just hasn't been like that for white people. And so it's really critical to understand that this was founded. And, you know, I mentioned this on the podcast last time, but next year is the 250th anniversary of the United States. And this was founded on colonial settler genocide that continues to rip families apart and impose slavery and our enslaved siblings that were brought here, as well as our indigenous, you know, this is Kumeyaay land, unceded Kumeyaay land, continue to face the brunt of this imperial power that has continued to extract and exploit its people. But now that we are in late stage capitalism and seeing the monster that is the oligarchs that have taken over, we have nothing to do but fight. And we have to continue to push the envelope for as far as we can, for as much time as we have, because we are but a ripple in this sea and the ocean that is rising up in America, rising up all around us. And the rest of the world is already aware. We're late to this game. When people are like, oh, what makes you feel like, you mean when you travel, like you mentioned, Chris, when you are able to travel, I have family, a part of the Afghan diaspora all over the world, Afghanistan, Germany, England and France, and we were forced to flee Afghanistan because we were threatened, with being imprisoned, being detained, being killed for our beliefs. And no matter who you are, you have to be able to understand that we're no longer in the minority. We're not in the minority of anything.
That's right.
Not in terms of our religions, not in terms of our race, not in terms of our ideology, but damn, Skippy, not in terms of our solidarity. And I think that the boycott that was started, the BDS campaign, has done an incredible job. And people said it was impossible to do, and the impossible is always said until it's done, and then it happens, and you're like, okay, what next? And so we see that since January, Target has lost over $16 billion. And other companies are now learning, like Starbucks, and closing over 400 offices across the shops around the country. Like, we need to continue to push the envelope, but we're not doing enough. And people need to know that their power is waking up, like you said, Kira, making sure that you have control over your money and making sure you are following and rising up and telling your leaders and your bosses and your elected officials, this isn't good enough. It's not going to cut it. And we expect you to act right. We expect you to be on our time, because we can no longer wait for so-called leaders, whether they're Democrats or not, to come save us.
Well, Mishkan's had a double dose. Okay.
Sorry, I woke up fired up. It was all yesterday. It was all yesterday, you know?
Well, that's I don't know. I'm like the metaphor person. I always have been. But if you think about the lion, right? It's like they're the kings and queens of the jungle, right? I mean, they're not the biggest. They're not the fastest. That's the cheetah, right? But it's attitude. I mean, they have a presence. Chris, when you walk into a room, you have a presence. You have that in you, and I think that's what that double dose does. When you have it, you get that. You remember who you are, and waking people up. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in like different countries because Chris, I know you've gone to Italy and they're planning. They've done a general strike. France can shut down the whole country.
Yes.
When they were trying to raise their retirement age a few years ago, I'm gonna say, by 2 years, the whole country burned, and then they're like, nah. Not today, Macron, I think it was, right? And then, and I believe the same year, Biden rose our retirement age. So, and we didn't do anything. We were at Starbucks. So I'm just saying, like, that's America. We're at brunch.
Not the Starbucks. Not the Starbucks, please.
And I met those union presidents in France and Paris who shut down their entire country. Basically, the sanitation workers stopped picking up the trash in all of the districts where the politicians lived for 3 weeks.
Good.
Imagine, yeah,
Love that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
how unsanitary that could have been. And then the electricity workers, no water, no electricity.
Love
That's it. General strike. You're
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
And they sued that union for I don't know how much money. It was they tried to prosecute about 10,000 of their members,
Wow.
but they failed.
Mhm.
Because I told the president to his face, I said, if they come for you, do it again.
Mhm.
What the fuck are they going to do?
Mhm.
Exactly.
So we have the power. We just got to use it.
That's right.
And these countries can do that, right? They can burn a country down. They can go on a general strike. They can pass universal health care for who knows how many years already. These European countries have it,
decades.
decades. And why have these countries been able to figure it out and we haven't? Are we that propagandized here in the U.S.? Like, are
Yes.
we that?
Yeah.
Confusion is
Yes.
control. I always say, when you're talking about raising the retirement age, guess what they were talking about at the same time? Banning TikTok. So people were just sort of focused
Distracted.
on TikTok, and then they go, okay,
This
going to
is
raise
it.
that retirement age.
Yeah.
But we
that's
also have to talk about racism.
Oh,
I mean, the other thing, because you're seeing some of those countries, on the other hand, turn in the other direction as diversity in those countries increase, because it is easy to get people in this country. It's very clear. People will vote against their own interest to make sure that somebody else doesn't get it. And I think we have to be honest, that's largely white Americans who are willing to make those kind of decisions to exclude, to make sure, we could have had a stronger labor movement, but white folks were willing to say, we're okay with not protecting Black workers as part of this agreement. And so all of those things there's the unmaking around that also has to happen. We cannot have a movement in this country and across the globe unless we recognize that we're humans, we're all the same, and that it is not in our interest to be focused on our differences and excluding one another. That only ever serves the wealthy, the powerful, for us to do that.
And I think this administration, you bring up perfectly how they've highlighted
Mhm.
how targeting jobs and making sure that they try to over 300,000 African American women,
Mhm.
our sisters, have been laid off, and they've made it very clear that they think that they are targeting a certain group of people, expecting us to be violent and get out in these streets. And you can see that during the Black Lives Matter movement and uproar, we had so many people coming out in the streets, and we were brutalized, we were shot at, we were tear gassed. But yet, since January 20th, when we have these protests happening, you don't see any violence. You see people actually shaking hands with the police and shaking hands with not understanding that the surveillance state is already here, and that we need to understand that whether you know or not, like 70, what was it, 70+% of EBT beneficiaries are actually white, but they thought that they would be targeting our minority, Black and brown communities. Well, because we have suffered and we have continued to have a lack of resources, we get creative because survival is in our system. But that solidarity is incredible, because at the same time, they told us we could never care about what's happening in another country. I've been told this, and I have worked in the Democratic Party for so many years in my previous other jobs and lives. And before I founded this organization, Borderlands for Equity, people were telling me, you got to pick one issue. You got to pick one issue. You can't focus on everything. Well, it turns out, no, that's wrong, and that's a lie.
That's right.
Intersectionality, and that's why I appreciate Chris so much, and your messaging and your conversations and your social media. Everything that you've done has shown the intersectionality of all of these issues, and you continue to push the envelope because people refuse to look at what they cannot accept. They literally refuse to look at it. But the rest of us are awake now,
Mhm.
so we can't wait for them to be able to do something. We got to do something while we still can.
Yeah.
Yeah, to bring in the younger generation, Leila,
Ouch!
I was
no, I mean,
I can't even,
Like,
I can't even
ouch,
say
wow,
anything.
like that.
That's right,
Almost
even-
30.
but I mean, you said you're a
Almost.
young organizer, and the San Diego City
It was bad.
community college yesterday, panel and discussion, the future Chris Smalls that you all sponsored at CPI. The youth, the youth is not taking it anymore. The youth is there. They've been there. They grew up on the internet. I grew up without most of us did grew up without the internet, and we learned the internet after we got out of high school. But the youth, they can easily just Google anything. Like, wait, that's not true. Like, you know what I mean? Like us, we had to wait till the boss, the authority told us something and this and that. So I think to bring in people like Leila into this organizing world, into the labor movement, should be labor's role. Like that's why the work that you all do at CPI with SEJ, full disclosure, I was an intern at SEJ
You were.
17. Yeah, in 2017, that was my first experience working with unions and nonprofits. I learned that that's where I wanted to become a union organizer. That's the kind of stuff that has to continue to be replicated over and over again to bring in the youth, because unions, I mean, Chris, you were talking about it yesterday that we have like old white dudes just leading the unions, and who are they representing? You were talking about representation. You were talking about representation now, right now, Kira. But Chris, like, tell us a little bit about representation and why it matters so much to bring the young generation into this movement.
Yeah. I mean, when we talking about like how other countries operate when it comes to the general strike, the unions invest into grassroots organizations that includes the student encampments. They're standing on the picket lines with the students, and when the students call for help, they're right there by their side to support them. And that solidarity, it resonates with the younger generation there, to the point where I went to Italy a few weeks ago and I learned that every high school was occupied for Palestine. That high school students, I couldn't imagine being in high school and walking out or disrupting or anything like that. But the students and the teachers understand the assignment. And that type of solidarity comes from union leadership, really good union leadership and education. You know, and I wish we had that type of investment here when it comes to our trade unions, but we don't. Because as I mentioned last night as well, the historical year that we had in 2022, when Amazon Labor Union won for the first time in American history, when Starbucks workers won for the first time in American history, with Trader Joe's workers unionizing for the first time in history, with all of these new unions that were forming or creating or happening in these victories, the labor movement only contributed 3% of their resources to every last one of us. And that is a shame that we were able to kick down the doors of some of the most hardest and unorganizable battles for the first time, and the gates should have been flooded with organizers, with community leaders, with investments, with funding, our resources, legal counsel, whatever you could provide should have been given to us with no question. But instead, we make our labor movement a competition. Because we're failing and we're losing members. You got unions organizing in sectors that they have no business organizing in, and they're losing because they don't know shit about what's happening on the workshop. And we can't allow this to continue to happen. If you want to build real solidarity, it's not just handing out a flyer and cutting a check. You have to be there and really learn your community, learn the type of community you're trying to organize at least. But most importantly, pass the torch to the people like the younger generation, like the students. Let them lead the way and you follow. Because a good leader, and I consider myself to be a good leader,
Absolutely.
I know when to lead and I know when to shut the fuck up. I know how to lead and I know how to sit in the background as well.
Definitely.
And as a good organizer, I tell my organizers all the time that 90% of organizing is listening.
Absolutely.
And I think it's, no coincidence that the students are the ones that are standing strong and, really pioneering this movement in the States. They're in an educational institution, and something that we say in labor all the time is educate, agitate, organize. So they're constantly surrounded by concepts where they're, encouraged to dig deeper, encouraged to look into this. And so I think that like them starting this movement says something, it speaks volumes. I also think that we could look at like our education systems across the nation and find how those flaws coincide as well. And, yeah, exactly what Chris said. Like, it really starts with education as well. And I think, we need to stand behind the students, but historically, students are also at the start
Yep.
of every movement, right?
Always.
And it takes us decades to look back and say, wow, like what were the students saying and how could people possibly not listen then? And even in, in Macklemore's song, Hins Hall,
Yeah.
one of my favorite lyrics is when he says, you want the world to stand up, and the students finally did. And I love that because I think, we have to draw these conclusions that make sense that the students are standing up. They are in these institutions that's encouraging them to learn. And they're, dismantling a system of oppression, which is mainstream media. And they're relying on TikTok and social media. It's something you have to be careful about, too, because Mark Zuckerberg and some of these folks that are also fueling, the other side of this movement and our algorithms and things of that sort. Like they have to actively find sources and encourage people to follow them. And so, yeah, I mean, I love how they're leading us in this movement as well, the students. And I think that like being a part of these spaces is not just coincidental.
At UCSD here in San Diego, when the students, part of PYM on campus, wanted to organize and create the same encampments, we were there on the ground from day one, from before the jump. And we were so supportive and watched how it was just unbelievable to watch students. I could never really imagine connecting with this issue, making connections that really like move the student body and move the academics in their midst. And the school came down so hard on them, and we had to represent, pro bono for free. We just operate on donations. Professors, tenured professors, graduate students, and TAs that were being targeted by the administration for simply speaking up on their freedom of speech. But the critical piece is that why would you introduce critical thinking skills and then not expect them to use them? That's the irony. Because like you educated these people, you brought them together, and why is it called Universe City? They brought the intersectionality of these issues. They were put their bodies on the line, exactly like you said, Chris. And when we were out there at Las Colinas Women's Jail, waiting and helping people as they were coming out of jail, there was over 36 people that came out of jail, many of whom were non-binary and part of the queer community. And people were like, well, how did they know about this issue? Because education via TikTok, via social media, has become a universal revolution. They have opened their minds and opened the floodgates on connecting what's happening. And we were so proud of what they did. But this administration at UCSD, like many administrations across the country, came down so hard on so many students and ended up actually deporting and having their student visas removed and removing people from school. Thankfully, the people we represented at Borderlands for Equity were not removed from their positions, were not deported, did not lose their visas. But we know that those people are continuing to be targeted. So we need to show up when people do put their body on the line, when people like Chris, when students at UCSD, wherever you may be, we need to show up as a community and support them and be there, not just by talk or by paper, but actually by actions and support, whether it's food, whether it's mutual aid, whether it's organizations, whether it's even making sure we have like water, whatever it is that they need, medical aid. And so I'm so proud of San Diego. And even though we get a really bad rap, we have been able to do so much for the community and expand and so quote unquote conservative community and do things the rest of the country is still struggling to try to achieve. So I think that if it's possible in San Diego, it can happen anywhere.
Definitely. Real quick, I wanted to touch on what you said, like why you charge us all up and expect us not to use it, right? Like the universities and stuff like that. That kind of reminded me of in Bernie 2016. I was a Bernie bro. That was actually my first experience in politics, period, being an activist or anything. I even quit my job and did Uber just so I could have more free time. And then I went to Philadelphia. I was a Bernie delegate. I did my little speech and I got like the #1 top vote getter and the delegate in the caucus to be a delegate for Bernie, went to Philadelphia, and then he started every speech with like, "We are going to start a revolution and this and that," and I believed it, and I think a lot of people did. Like it was crazy. He went from nothing to something, and we went to Philadelphia. We're like, we're going to tear this down. The convention. Screw Hillary Clinton. She's crooked. She's been for every war. She's the example of the empire. She's everything that Bernie ran against. Like Bernie's whole career was against Hillary Clinton. And then when we were like in the California delegation, we were the largest delegation out there. And then he, in a speech one morning, he told us, and that's why we have to endorse Hillary Clinton. I'm stepping down. We thought he was going to go through the whole thing. Everybody booed him. Everybody. I swear to God. People were crying. People were,
Oh.
and I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I started booing him. And it's insane. He's all like, he started crying. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves. Like, what if Trump wins? And then what are you gonna tell your grandchildren? Like all kinds of things. He was like this. And then I'm like, in my head, or the way that I reflected on that was, you charge us all up to hate the empire, to hate the status quo. You got us out here. We're all living paycheck to paycheck, and we went to Philadelphia, and now you're telling us to support the person that you ran against. It just didn't make sense to a lot of us. It felt like I got gut punched. So, with that, is it time now? Like Bernie, he ran as he's an independent. He ran in the Democratic Party as the guy that's going to change everything, but only to support uh, Hillary, and then only to support Biden, and then Kamala, the establishment that he praises to be against. Is it now time for a Labor Party? I think that's a question that me and Chris do like to ask a lot of people. We talk about it all the time. I know we've even asked a lot of big labor people, and they said no, we shouldn't. But I still don't believe that. I still think that we should. But this is a question to everybody: is it time now? Like, did Bernie prove it to us? Like, it's time now. The genocide didn't just start with Trump. It's not Trump's genocide. It's Biden's genocide, a Democrat. So is it time now to start a Labor Party?
Well, I have to now I have to be inside the empire and say, as a 501c3 organization, we neither support nor oppose any candidates for office. Um, but maybe what I can say is this. I don't know that it matters what structure. I'm not sure it matters. I think what matters is that whatever the structure is for movement, that it is one where people are involved in the strategy. They're not just mobilized to turn out. Like when I hear that story that you're telling about Bernie, it's that Bernie is the head of the movement. He's not having a conversation, right, with the membership. He's not having a conversation like, this is going to be our strategy. What do you want me to do? When do you want me to stop moving forward in this way? And the kind of movements we need, whether they're led by labor or some other structure, whether it's taking over traditional parties, it's the heart of it is that it has to be a system that's really based in the people. And when we don't base it in the people, and when we don't actually have real conversations, then people lose hope because we tell them the other thing we're telling them is that there's one person who's going to save you. There's one person who's going to be able to tell you exactly what's going to work. And there's nothing in the history of the world that demonstrates that there's one person that has the answer. What we know is that when we put ourselves together and we're willing to fight it out, we're willing to try different things, we're willing to know the one thing we share in common is that we're moving in the same direction. That doesn't mean we always do the same thing. That's the movements that matter. And if you look at the history of them, there's different tactics, there's different structures, but the part that wins is that the people are in control.
Should we start a Labor Party? Is it time now? What do you all think? We just heard from Kira.
I'll take this one. We overdue, yeah. So I just tell you, once again, going back to overseas, some of these other countries I visited, most of them have multi-party governments, and it doesn't have to be just a Labor Party, whether it's a Green Party, Labor Party, Christian Party, Socialist Party, Communist Party, Green Labor Party. They have multi-party systems, multi-party governments. You can look at Canada as well. They have the NDP party. That's their Labor Party. The countries that go on general strikes, the countries that fully divested from Israel, like Spain, like Greece, like Italy as well, South Africa. Once again, they have socialistic values and communist values as well. Their unions are absolutely more militant than ours. They will actually use their and their unions are not as rich as ours. You know, their unions are struggling, and they still will risk their livelihoods and go on strike. I bet some collectives that once again they have to fundraise. Are they occupy buildings, warehouses? They do whatever they have to do to make sure that it gets done. And we had a labor party here in the U.S. Believe it or not, in 1970, we had a labor party that dissolved because the two-party system attacked it just like they attacked all of the third parties that ran last year. So last year, during the presidential election, every presidential candidate that was running against Biden and Trump came to the Amazon Labor Union office in person to visit me. Jill Stein, the Green Party, Cornel West, Claudia De La Cruz, and Marion Williamson as an independent. All four of them came to speak to my members. And in our Constitution, with my union, we don't endorse any politician. We don't care how progressive they are. And even Mondani then came to the Amazon Labor Union a week before I got on the flotilla. Mondani showed up. So politicians show up all the time. They reach out to me. They ask me for support, advice, sometimes endorsements. And that's a personal decision that I'll make. I'll never leave it on my union to do that. But yes, we definitely need a labor party, because I told every last one of them the same thing, that without labor, third parties don't have a chance, because the AFL-CIO, which we all know represents 12.5 million workers, who is the largest federation for U.S., who has 60 unions underneath their umbrella, nationally and internationally, along with other unions outside of the AFL-CIO, majority of them vote blue no matter who. And we saw that again last year when Joe Biden was the candidate, and then they appointed Kamala, and then all the unions said, okay, Kamala's that. What has she done for labor? Absolutely nothing. And the labor movement had a decision to make. They could have said, you know what, we're going to look at these other third-party candidates who has some really great policies. Actually, all of them had better policies than the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. But they don't even give them a fighting chance.
I think
They
that,
don't.
yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, rank and file members may, of course, endorse candidates, third parties. Some locals are able to do that if they have autonomy. But for the majority of our labor movement, every year, every decade, it's been mostly Democratic. And there's a disconnect with our politicians right now, and with the Democratic Party in particular, and the working class. So when we vote for these politicians, when we endorse these politicians, we're being the problem in disconnecting ourselves from the grassroots organizing that the students are doing for Palestine, that anybody is speaking up about Palestine or any of these working class issues when we sign up and endorse these politicians. And the best example I can give you was last year when Kamala Harris was being interviewed by billionaire Oprah multiple times. I think she did at least 2 interviews with her. And behind her, and y'all can look right now, is unions. So how can we say we're standing with the working class? But right in front of y'all is a billionaire. And we know billionaires don't become rich without exploitation of a class of people.
That's right.
There's a rule, I think, the Republican and Democratic Party, and that rule is always let the establishment win. And either the Democrat or the Republican, that's a rule for that they have to maintain
Right.
the two-party plantation.
Absolutely.
I like the way you said that. And the problem with you, Chris Smalls, is you don't let the establishment win. And I guess we are all, in a way, targets because you're willing to put your life on the line. When Juan and I first started this podcast, we were you know, we got pushback,
You know, of course.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but you know, honey badgers don't really care, do they? So it is really interesting that, you know, you have to break the rules. People say, is it legal to go on a general strike? Who cares? You got
Yeah,
Rosa Parks it up,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah, yeah. No, and you know, when I saw that there's a void for a real unity, a moment of unity right here in this moment
Mhm.
to unite the left. What represents every movement is labor.
Labor.
Mhm.
Because no matter you're fighting for social injustice, civil rights, women's rights, whatever, climate, at the end of the day, we're all workers. So the Labor Party that, yeah, I haven't fully launched it. It's a soft launch.
Mhm.
But I threw up this website. I threw up this Instagram about 6 to 8 months ago. All the countries that I visited around the world, and some that I haven't, I researched their policies, what they have there. And I met with some of their governments. I met with some of the parliament members. Trust me, I met people in what would be considered, young. AOC is considered young. Mandani is considered young, right? 30-year-old senators, our congress people, our mayors. That's unprecedented in the United States. Well, I can tell you right now, I met elected officials who are 22 years old, 23 years old, fresh out of college. And they are willing to go to Amazon because they were invited as parliament members from another country. Amazon flies in the parliaments, and they were like, Chris, what do you want us to do when we get there? What do you want? They're willing to FaceTime me while they're sitting there talking to the CEO because they understand, like, no, you guys need to be negotiating the contract. I wish I had a politician here in this country that's willing to even go step foot in the corporate office and do that for us. But we don't. So once again, the policies that I've
We don't yet.
yeah, right.
Inshallah, we will.
Well, us storming the AFL-CIO was unprecedented 2 weeks ago. And that started from y'all resolution as well. But yeah, the Labor Party that I envision on creating is absolutely grassroots, just like any other thing that I'm involved with. But the policies that I learned from these countries are incorporated already. And of course, they can use some fine tuning to fit the American culture here. But at the same time, I promise you, there's something in this party that you will resonate with. And I'm asking for people to help me build the party collectively. Like you said, it's not one person. It's not up to me. I'll plant the seed, and I don't want to run for president, but I want to create the foundation and give people the opportunity. The same way I gave workers the opportunity to form a union and fight for their rights. This is the same thing I'm trying to do with this party. We need more options. Doesn't saying that it has to be a Labor Party, but to have more options outside of the two-party plantation is giving the working class a choice. And I think this party, if the labor movement was really about labor, this is the party that they will want to endorse instead of endorsing the same two-party plantation. Where you see now, if they're not endorsing Democrats, they're supporting the Republicans by sending money to both sides like the Teamsters did, 40,000 to the Trump administration. Actually, they've done more than that now. Endorsing Republicans that are now sitting on a labor board that's dismantled, endorsing a Republican Secretary of Labor, endorsing Trump's tariffs, who cost 30,000 union members jobs in Canada overnight. And we got Sean Fain and Sean O'Brien and all of these so-called labor leaders endorsing these tariffs, not understanding the effect it has on the other side.
Okay.
We have to do better. And the Labor Party is a way that I see forward. And I'm not saying I'm going to create it by myself, but I could tell you this. When I was in prison, I didn't have access to my main Instagram. I had my assistants running my social media to communicate whatever messages they got from our lawyers in Israel. And they were using my Labor Party page to send out the messages on the updates about me. Our numbers quadrupled. We went from maybe 1,500 to about 9,000. I think it's over 9,000 right now. 9 to almost 10,000. So people are hungry. They're looking for a home because those people now, they're saying, oh, wow, we didn't know that you were even doing it, because I never really talked about it, even with my main platform. But I want people to naturally gravitate to it, and they have. And if the right people behind it, the right advisors behind it, the right the right labor unions endorse this party, we have a real valuable moment for 2028, where we know Trump is going to try to be the last president.
Absolutely.
That is his goal. So we can even do, which I believe is the definition of insanity, is do the same thing and expect different results. Or we could do something different.
Right.
Definitely. So we are running up, and I know we have other plans for the day, but any last words that you all want to throw in here? Any questions? Any last comments or
Call to action.
call to action?
I got a couple of them. Since I didn't get to elaborate on the me storming the AFL-CIO, I'm just going to say call to action. November 28th, Black Friday, Italy has called a general strike. The weekend of the 28th to 29th, they're going to shut down their country. You'll see it on social media over the next few weeks if you haven't already. Follow the USB, that's the federation. In solidarity with us here in the U.S., that same federation is calling it, alongside me and other labor leaders here and other community or organizations, International Day of Action, International Day of Solidarity for Palestine, especially that weekend, November 29th, is the International Day for Palestine. We're going to be rallying in front of the ILA on the East Coast, the International Longshoremen Association, demanding the same from your resolution, that we fully divest arms embargo, shut down the ports, call it what it is, a genocide. And on the West Coast, if you're in the Bay Area, we're going to be protesting in front of the ILWU in San Francisco. Same thing, delivering these demands, delivering that petition that stemmed from the San Diego Labor Council resolution. And this is a coalition called Disarm Genocide, something that I founded along a Palestinian activist named Lulu, who's based in LA. We drafted up this petition that came from this resolution. We did a rally in LA a few months back. One thing after another, we invited folks in, and now we have a coalition. We were happy to have PYM DMV join us, Cold Pink DMV joined us as well. Labor for Palestine, the National, signed on, endorsed us as well. A lot of community, different orgs. We had union members from SEIU there. We have IOWU, Local 10 members involved now. So it's growing. It's getting more powerful. Once again, you can get involved and sign the petition, share it on disarmgenocide.org. That is our website. Is actively up. And we have a social media now. I think we have Instagram as well, Disarm Genocide. And lastly, you want to help me out with the Labor Party, www.thelaborpartyus.com. You can fill out, it's just a landing page. Fill it out, email. We'll get in contact with you over the next few months. Haven't done anything yet, and I'm saying that because we will get started shortly. And follow us on social media, on Instagram. That's the only thing we have right now. It's one simple platform for the time being, the Labor Party USA on Instagram. And I'm asking everybody for their solidarity, just like Palestine. They don't want our sympathy. They want our solidarity. The U.S. is the #1 supplier for weapons and money. We have to do more, and we have to push our labor leaders and our labor movement to do more. Get involved. Don't wait.
I mean,
Definitely. Leila, you can
I'll add a couple thoughts to that. I think, something I want to share that one of my members shared with me that I want to share with everyone is when injustice becomes the law, resistance becomes a duty. And I love that, and I want to share that. We have an obligation. Don't become numb to the moment. This is all of our fights. Find ways to resist through education, resist through talking about it, resist through boycott, resist through demanding more. And this is a movement that we're all in together. So thank you for having us today.
Thank you, Leila. Kira, Ms. Mom?
I don't want to say a lot because you can't follow that. But the thing I've been trying to commit to throughout all of this is just to remind people that I love you. I love you and thank you.
Love you too. Thank you.
So beautiful. I love you too.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Chris. Thank you, Leila, Juan, Christopher, for continuing to keep up the good fight. And as an organizer, we are committed to continuing our education, not just of ourselves, but as of our community. So please follow Borderlands for Equity on social media at Borderlands Equity, as well as our website. And we want to connect people to organizations. And if you don't have a political home, please join us and we can help you and connect you to where it is in your community that you can get involved. We're not telling people what to do, but rather we're asking people to rise up, and we'll help you connect to where you are comfortable, where you are able to uplift the community. And so thank you so much. And we will join your Disarm Coalition as well. And thank you so much for what you continue to do. And I'm excited about our rally tomorrow. And for folks that don't know, we're having a rally continuing the rally that's happening every Thursday in downtown San Diego. It is the ICE out of California rally. And inshallah, Chris will be the headline guest speaker at the rally. And so please share that with our community and continue to speak up for what's right against ICE in our communities.
Cool. Thank you, Chris.
Well, when I was on strike, 2003, 2004, that's 20 years ago. That's a while ago. I remember a guy named Nathan, and on the picket line, you talk. There's nothing else to do. You're just walking around talking, and we'd go back and forth on social issues. He was pro-life. I was pro-choice at the time, and he was out there on day one, and 139 days later, 4.5 months later, he was out there with me. And, it wasn't like our political views necessarily kept us together. It was the labor movement. And I think, Chris, you said it best when you were testifying in Congress, and you said, this isn't a Republican thing or Democratic thing. It's a worker thing. And that's the foundation of the labor movement. So thank you very much, all of you, for being here on the 50th episode of the UnionorBust podcast.
Cool.
Cheers to 50 more,
Yeah, I love you all too. And Chris knows me. I never say that word. So I have to start somewhere.
He doesn't even hug me.
Yeah, I don't even hug my mom. I should start doing that.
Took the love pill.
Yeah.
That's the one I'm passing out.
We need some multivitamins.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for watching and listening. Please subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/UnionorBust. It's only $5 a month. Anything helps. Support independent media. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Woo.
Yeah.